In the shimmering sands of antiquity, where the Nile snakes its way through the arid lands of northeastern Africa, there arose one of the most storied civilizations in human history, ancient Egypt. For centuries, tales of its pharaohs, pyramids, temples, and hieroglyphs have captivated the world's imagination. But behind the gold-encrusted death masks and the marble statues that populate museum halls lies a less told chapter of that magnificent saga, the story of the Black Pharaohs, the kings of Nubia who not only ruled their homeland but once sat upon the throne of Egypt itself. These rulers, often overlooked or forgotten by mainstream historical narratives, played a decisive role in restoring Egypt's past glory during one of its darkest periods. They were both conquerors and saviors, guardians of tradition and symbols of a shared African legacy. To understand the story of these kings, one must travel south of Egypt, into what is today northern Sudan, an area that was once known as Nubia. The Nubians were not strangers to Egypt. For millennia, the two civilizations shared a complex relationship of trade, war, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. Nubia was rich in gold, ivory, ebony, and other precious goods that made it a coveted partner and, at times, a target of Egyptian ambition. Egyptian texts and temple reliefs frequently reference military campaigns into Nubia, especially during the Middle Kingdom and New Kingdom periods, depicting the Nubians as both fierce warriors and bearers of tribute. But this relationship was far from one-sided. Nubian culture itself was deeply sophisticated, with its own pantheon of gods, artistic traditions, and royal customs. Over time, the Nubians absorbed many aspects of Egyptian culture, particularly during periods of Egyptian occupation. Temples were built in Egyptian style. The hieroglyphic script was adopted. By the 8th century BCE, Egypt was a fractured and vulnerable land. The once mighty civilization had been divided into competing city-states and dynasties. Foreign powers, especially the Libyans, had taken control of large parts of the Nile Delta. Temples were neglected, the authority of the pharaoh diminished, and Egypt's cultural and spiritual heritage seemed to be unraveling. It was in this moment of crisis that salvation came not from the north, but from the south. The Kushite kingdom, centered in Napata near the sacred mountain of Jebel Bako in Nubia, had been steadily growing in power. Its kings considered themselves true heirs of Egyptian tradition and religion. Unlike the Libyan dynasties that ruled parts of Egypt at the time, the Kushites did not see themselves as foreigners or usurpers. They saw themselves as restorers of Ma'at, the ancient Egyptian principle of truth, balance, and cosmic order. The first of the Kushite kings to take decisive action was Alara, who established the foundations of the Nubian dynasty that would soon rise to dominate Egypt. But it was his successors, particularly King Pi, also known as Pianki, who truly began the campaign to unify the Nile Valley under Kushite rule. In the mid-8th century BCE, Pi launched a military expedition into Egypt to subdue the feuding local rulers and reclaim Egypt from disorder. His campaign was not just military but spiritual. Before marching north, he stopped to perform sacred rites at Thebes, the religious heart of Egypt, where he saw the blessing of Ammonius, the great god of Karnak. Pi's campaign was remarkably successful. He moved through Upper Egypt, capturing cities and temples, eventually confronting the powerful Libyan ruler Tefnakht in the delta. After a series of victories, Pi recorded his triumph on a monumental stela, an inscription now known as the Victory Stela of Pi. Written in elegant hieroglyphics, the text described neglect of temples and divine order. To Pi, this was not merely a conquest, it was a religious mission. After restoring order, he returned to Napata rather than settling in Egypt, content with installing loyal governors and reaffirming the spiritual supremacy of Ammonius. His successors would go further. Pi's brother, Shabaka, consolidated control over all of Egypt and officially became pharaoh, founding what modern historians call Egypt's 25th dynasty. Under the rule of Shabaka and his successors, Shabitku, Tahaka, and Tanitomoni, Egypt experienced a renaissance of religion, art, and architecture. The Nubian pharaohs invested heavily in restoring temples, reviving the priesthood, and reasserting the divine authority of the monarchy. They sought to bring back the glories of earlier ages, modeling themselves on the great pharaohs of the Old and Middle Kingdoms. Among them, Tahaka stands out as the most renowned. His reign, which lasted from roughly 690 to 664 BC, was marked by military ambition, grand construction projects, and fierce resistance against foreign invasion. He built extensively throughout Egypt and Nubia, commissioning temples, shrines,